supplies. We've got 1 minute to go. It's Friday. Friday. It'll show up in just a minute. So we're a little short-handed today. Tate is on the computer. Talia has an important call that she has to take for her summer internship. So both my boys are behind the screens, behind the scenes. Okay, you got it? Y'all got it?
He's on yesterday's one.
Oh, they're getting it together. We'll start right at 1 o'clock. Okay.
It's 1.
It's 1 o'clock. Tate's checked his watch. So let's go ahead and get ready to talk about the rose windows of Notre Dame. While I'm talking, I want to make sure that you have your supplies today. So you need some paper. I'm going to be on the board. So heavy paper because we are going to be putting water on it. And then you need a ruler, some water-based markers. Make sure, and the way you know they're water-based is if you add some water to them and they move a little bit. And then some water and brushes, water jar and brushes. And then we need lots of things that are circular because we're going to trace circles. So see all these things. We're on? Okay, they found it. They found it. So Tate's going to be on the computer. He's going to try and tell me your questions, but just have patience with us today. And Keaton will be behind the camera, and he'll make sure I'm showing you all this stuff correctly. But you need things that are circular. So pot lids, we're just going to use them for tracing. If you remember our Great Wave long ago, we like to use some circles to trace those when we created the wave. Oh, Tate says there's a question.
Are Crayola markers water-based?
Crayola markers are water-based. Great question. We're actually going to be using some Crayola today. Here we go, like that, just like that. Also, I pulled out some of my Tombow. These are some of my favorites, but lots of people don't have a giant stash of those in their house. So go ahead and get those together, and let's start talking about some windows. So windows, I have windows in my house. You probably have some windows in your house. Why are windows so special? Well, when your window looks like this, that's pretty special. This is one of 3 rose windows in Notre Dame Cathedral in Paris. Notre Dame de Paris means Our Lady of Paris. And so Our Lady is beautifully decorated. Now, there was a terrible fire about a year ago, and they were able to save the windows. So that is really cool. We have a question from Tate.
Can we use watercolor?
You can use watercolor if you do not have water-based markers. So,
or is there sub besides watercolor for markers?
Really, we're going to be adding color, so anything you have to add color is fine today. But a rose window is not just a round window. What happens is you have a round window that's just plain. Then you have a window that's a wheel window, and that's any kind of window that has spokes that come in. And then when you get super fancy and lots of layers and different shapes as though petals are unfolding, it's a rose window. And that is really popular long ago in Gothic architecture. So 1200s is when Notre Dame was built. So that's when these windows were made. Now the cool thing is a lot of the stained glass is original. A lot's been replaced, but there is stained glass made by artists' hands in the 1200s still in the windows. So these are often referenced. People love the shape. Not only that, they tell a story. They tell what was going on. This particular one is the New Testament. So it's going to talk about the New Testament. They didn't know how to read, so they would look at pictures. But I still like to look at pictures. I'm pretty visual. So these still are beautiful to me. And, oh, there's a question for Keaton.
Will today's lesson hurt your markers?
Today's lesson will not hurt your markers. I do love that y'all always ask. I will let you know if for some reason it's going to be something that's going to stain or something that you have. So on your circles, you're not going to hurt anything. You can use anything around your house. The only thing that might happen is you might get a little permanent marker around the edge. Oh yeah, you need a black permanent marker. So, are you ready to make a rose window? We learned a little bit about Middle Ages, long ago, 1200s. That seems so long ago, but just think, this has lasted that long. So what we're going to do is we're going to use the circular shapes. See how they're concentric, meaning they fit inside of each other. And then we're going to use our ruler to make the wheels that come out. And then we're going to add some color. Now this is called, in a window, it's kind of a cool name. It's called bar tracery. So you can say, oh, when someone asks, hey, what were you doing today? You said, oh, I was working on my rose window and had to make my bar tracery. So, but that was amazing. That was a huge architectural discovery that made these windows possible. So if you will find, now I tried to find the biggest circle I could that still fit on my paper and would be concentric. I want you to find your biggest circle. The reason you're going to start with your largest circle to trace is because if I start with my smallest, if I start with a smaller one and I trace it and I put this over, I don't know where that is. So I want to start with my biggest one and then I'll work in. So put your biggest one, just lay it on your paper, take your black permanent marker, and we're going to trace around it. So you're going to get a big circle going around there. So, oh, there's a question, Tate.
What if you don't have water-based markers?
Well, just add color best you can. I'm just going to show you some blending techniques with water, with the water-based markers. So, as with any class, use anything you have on hand. Some things are very specific, like if we're making gesso with acrylic paint, you have to have acrylic paint. But we always post the videos afterwards to Facebook, or we put them on our YouTube, Kisa Houseman, and that way you can reference again. So now we're going to take your second smallest circle. So this is my second one. Look, I had some Christmas plates sitting right there over there. That's my second one. It's going to come inside. So it doesn't matter how close or small, but see how I can see where that first one is? So that way I can center it best I can. I'm going to center that circle and I'm going to trace that. Okay. There we go. Well, this is just a good lesson to learn when you're thinking about drawing and you're thinking, well, I need to make a wheel or I need to do that. If you just look around, these are always handy. So, and I'm going to keep going till I get to the center of my circle, like the center of the Tootsie Roll Pop. So I'm going to take another one in here. I'm just going to add that. And it doesn't matter if you have 3 circles or 4 circles or 5 circles. If you only have 3, just do that and get on in. And then we just are going to keep going. I just happened to grab what I had when we got to the studio today. Let me see if I want that one. I may skip some space. Maybe I'm going to make that one right in there. So I might have to just get right in front of it, guys, to make sure I have it lined up. Now, I love to trace tape rolls because I have a bigger circle and a smaller circle right here. Yes, Keaton?
Does it matter if there is a drastic difference between sizes?
No, that's why I jumped to right here so you can see that. You are making your own rose window. I just happen to have 2 that were very similar right there. So see, if you have this big a size, that's fine. Once you kind of learn this concept, and it's very easy. So I'm going to go all the way to the middle. I wish I even had a smaller circle. Do you see a smaller one over there? Well, I'll go with this one. This will be fine. Maybe I can trace the bottom right there. Yeah, there we go. Sorry, I'm right in front of it, guys, I know, but that way I can move out of the way. Now it looks like I have a target, doesn't it? Boom, boom, boom. So you want to trace from your bigger circle in, and you're just letting them down and then centering it best you can. When we talk about drawing and talk about finding shapes and things, that's basically what we're doing. We're finding, do you see the circles that go around and around and around? It doesn't matter if you're far apart, you can still add designs, but do you see? So we're finding the shapes within the shapes. So you can have 8 circles in here, you can have multiples. I just know you have whatever you have around your house. I turn over. We love to save our plastic containers, so like sour cream, because I mix paint in them and I keep paint in the studios. But those, I keep those lids all the time because they're great in classes for kids to trace. When you're finding shapes, it's always a good inspiration. So I'm going to let you finish drawing your circles, and then we're going to find our center point. So we're going to go right in the middle as though we were making a bullseye in our target. And we're going to put a mark right there. And so then now let's get ready to grab our rulers. And we're going to start making the wheel spokes. Remember, this is a rose window because it's a fancy wheel. So see all these spokes? Now we're not going to worry about replicating how the numbers of spokes. That's actually very important. All the numbers in these windows, the colors, everything meant something. So you would have numbers of 12s, numbers of 4s. You would have colors like blue for purity and red for sacrifice. You would have all these that meant something to the people that were viewing them at the time that couldn't read. Now we see it because we're so far away, because these windows are way up high in a big cathedral. But each one is a story, and each one, so it's not just the story, it's even the numbers, how it's broken down. Everything was purposeful. So when you make your art, sometimes that's just fun, but sometimes you want to think about that. You want to think, what does this mean to me? Like today is May 1st. So you could want something very important in the center because it's the first day of the month, the number 1 right there. That's how symbolism works. So let's get our rulers. We've got our center point, and I am going to draw a line all the way down the middle here. So I'm going to just put it down my center point, and I think I'm pretty straight. Doesn't matter. We're going to divide it down the middle, okay? And then we're going to do the same thing across here, and then we're going to make a big pizza pie. So we're going to keep going. So I'm just placing my ruler along my center point, and I'm dividing it in half. You see that? Now it really does look like a target. Yes, Tate says there's a question.
Is it okay if we do it in pencil first?
It is, but the only thing with doing it in pencil first, I will tell you this, is it's hard to really trace the circle over sometimes with your Sharpie marker. So if you have something that's very precious, like you're using Mom's china, maybe you want to draw it in pencil first and then trace over. But other than that, I typically trace straight away with my permanent marker. So now we're going to go right here and then right here. So again, I'm going to line my ruler up with that center, and I'm going to center it best I can within those. It doesn't have to be exact today. And then we're going to come this way. Okay, same thing. Lining it with that center. Now, I know it's easy for me to say, but do not stress if they are not all exact. That's part of the process. Like, love where you are finding them. That's going to be your own window. Enjoy making the window. Sometimes getting lost in the details and getting worried about them robs you of the joy of the whole creating. So don't worry if they're not quite exactly perfect. We're not worrying about that today. We're not measuring. We're just creating our own rose window. So now, look, we've got all these pie shapes. So let's look at our window again. And, oops, I was upside down. So do you see how we're going to have these rose shapes? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take one of my circles, and then I'm going to take another circle, and we're going to make those flower shapes. So you see how they come up? we're going to do that. We're going to come up like that. And I'm rounding a triangle shape on top. So we're going to come up and come down. You see what's starting to happen? Come up and come down. And come up and come down. Can you see? All of a sudden, we're starting to get some of our rose petals to form. Now, it doesn't matter if it's the second or third circle, just you want to do somewhere around the middle. So here we go. Come up and come down. And we're going to work our way all the way around our pie. Look at that. Can you start to see how that happens? Now, you can get really crazy and we can go all over. But what we're going to do is we're going to get our ruler again. And I'm going to let you finish that. So basically, I went around. I didn't start with my center. You can come out one or two, wherever, as close as your circles are. On mine, I'm about the middle of our window. So, and then I'm just joining in each slice of pizza. I'm coming up and adding kind of a rounded triangle shape. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the point of each one of these and I'm going to line up my ruler with the center and this point, and I'm going to make a line out here. So I'm going to come over and show you that. So here's the center point and here's the tip of my triangle. I'm going to line it up. I don't want to put this line in the center. I want to put the line outwards. So we're going to come out like that. So we're breaking these outer pieces of pizza as though you need to share it, like you've eaten too many pieces of pizza and you have to give half this pizza to someone else. So we're going to line our ruler up with that center dot right here in that point. And we're going to pull that line down. So you see how we're breaking these lines up out here so that our pieces of pie get smaller as we go out. You can kind of see how this happens right here in our window. See in our window where we have that arch, and then we break this up as we go. So we're going to continue that all the way around our circle. So I line it up with a point and I line my ruler. My ruler is always aligning with that center point, even though I'm not drawing my line. And then I'm coming out that way. So we're going to line it up with the center and the point. And Tate, let me know if anybody needs me to repeat any of this, because this is a lot of instructions. But I know y'all are awesome. So lining it up with the center and the point and coming out, you see what's starting to happen? It's starting to turn from a target into a rose window. Oh, Tate says there's a question.
Is this the last art class?
No. So he just asked an important question, which I'll talk to you about at the end of class. So about how many more art classes are there? So we're going to line up with the center and come down here. And we're going to, I have one more. So see where you are. So, okay. So now we've started to divide it in greater sections. And we keep it going. So I'm going to let you finish up as you move around your circles. We've made all our concentric circles. We then divided it up into a pie. We divided it into 8 sections. Then we made somewhere in the middle on one of your circles, you started making the flower petals, which are rounded triangle shapes. And then from the center of each of those petals, we divided that out. So now we're going to make a petal shape in one of your outer circles, not all the way to the end, but right here. So I'm going to do the same thing, that same kind of petal shape. And so it's as though we go down to the middle and up. Down to the middle and up. It's almost like I'm going to make a zigzag line, but it's still that same shape that we did up here. We're just moving it around more. See how we start to get that shape as we go around? Now, if you haven't thought, most of the time people draw a box and they start filling it in. If you haven't started to think about doing concentric shapes and making designs, lots of people will use this type of concentric circle for making what they call mandalas. But again, anything like this, you can start designing really beautiful things and just start making lines and shapes, and you end up with patterns, beautiful patterns. So I am continuing. I'm breaking all those extra shapes. So you see how we're getting that flower shape? Okay. So each one, I'm going to continue all the way around. Now, if you had a wider space, your petals are going to be wider, and that's fine too. So you start to see our window. Oops, there's part of my circle that wasn't complete. You start to shape. Yeah. So now here is where it gets a little fun. You really can start doing whatever you want. You can start adding more petals in. You can start adding other shapes. We're going to do a little bit of a reverse shape and just get another design just because I happen to have a skinny space. If you took up all of this, you can add some more design in here. But pick another one of your rings except the very center. So if you have another ring, and then think of doing the design as though it's coming in. So let's do that same thing and let's bring it in. Going all the way around. So now I'm bringing it to meet that point in the middle, doing that same kind of rounded triangle shape so that I end up with a point. This is Gothic architecture, so there would be a point at the end of your arches. So we're getting a little complex here. Now, I had 2 tight rings, and people might not have had 2 rings that tight. So don't worry, if yours looks different, that's because you're using what you had. And that shows you different ways. The next time you made one, you might do something, add more rings or fewer rings. You might go, oh, I have too many rings. But it works. This works no matter where your rings are. Oh, I could sneeze. So I'm making my way all around. And can you see, Tate, are there any questions? Are we doing great, guys? Everyone's doing awesome? Good job. See how we start to get our window here? So we're going to add a few more details, and I'm going to show you how to darken in some of the lines, but I want you to go ahead and finish going around your circle and getting your rose window design. And there is so much detail in this window. Again, this window is over 30 feet wide. Huge, probably bigger. It's bigger than the room I'm sitting in, probably bigger than the room you're sitting in. And so it's giant. So when each one of these looks tiny, it's probably this big. So, and remember, all these black lines aren't actually black lines. They're stone. It's actual stone. So that's just when the light comes in, you get the casting of that backlit look. So it looks black. So I'm going to come to my center, and this is where I'm going to show you the technique of just thickening your lines and darkening them. You can choose to do it all over, but I'll show you how I would do it in a few places. So right here, I have a pie of 8 things. I'm going to take this end and I'm going to round it up. Can you see what I just did? And then I'm going to fill that in black. I'm basically making a reverse flower petal. So I'm doing exactly what I did out here or right here. I'm just filling in that inside. So Let me show you what I just did. I came from a little bit up there, then I come down and I round it and I come back up. And then I fill in that little space right there. So you're starting to get that flower to show. We take it around so it looks like that, or it looks like this, and then we fill in that space. So that way we're starting to get that thicker feel. So we do that. So it looks like that. We're just making that little rounded, and it's as though we're making triangles in the corner and we're filling them in. Now, I'll tell you something. If you made marbleized paper and you just did this design on top of it in black and developed it and let the marble be, oh, so cool. Okay, so you see what just happened there? That was just thickening the line. If we take that idea and we come up to each of our corners and we round a corner, see how I just rounded that corner? Can they see that, Keaton? Okay. It's real tiny. I'm just rounding my corners right here. Like that. Can you see that? And then if I fill them in, you'll be able to see a little bit better. It's going to thicken up. I'm going to do the same thing and then watch what happens. That makes a triangle over here. So I'm going to round that up and round that down. This is when it starts to get a little bit tricky because it's kind of pretty much little details. But here's the best thing. If you do something in one section, just do it in the next and repeat it all the way around and it becomes your pattern. So if you did a squiggle line, then do a squiggle line. If you did a triangle shape that comes in, do a triangle shape. The important thing is that you repeat your pattern as it goes around. It doesn't matter whether you rounded your corner or made a straight line. It matters that you did it all the way in each section. Because you're taking that pattern and you're repeating that. So you could so I'm going to thicken this up. Again, I came down in just my corners like that. I didn't make a whole big petal. I'm just thickening this line. But see how that thickens that line when it comes around? So. Now this tip is something, we're not going to spend the time, but you could spend your time working all around. And I've seen some of your beautiful drawings, and some of you love to be very detail oriented. So this is the fun for you. But I don't want to spend too long drawing. I want to get into our coloring. So those that like to just get it on there and get ready to put some color will be ready for you. Tate says there's a question.
Maybe at the end, can you repeat every step?
Well, I can just repeat them real quickly, what we just did. And then again, remember, we post the videos after, so you can always, right afterwards, you can watch them and stop and rewind. But while you're working on your details, we drew our circles concentrically. Then we divided our circles that kind of look like a target, remember? We divided those up into basically a pie with 8 pieces. Then we came along and we started adding flower petals like this. Then we divided from our flower petals to the end. We divided those sections into extra as though we were sharing extra pizza. And then we added flower petals between those lines. And then we did reverse flower petals coming in this way. And the important thing is not the pattern necessarily, but then you do the same thing. If I'm going to do something in this ring, I'm going to do the same thing all the way around. That's what happens as it goes. So, if this is all the blue pattern, they kept a blue pattern. If this was all a green pattern, they kept a green pattern. You see how that works? So, and then what I did was I rounded in the center. I rounded that up, and then I'm rounding these corners and thickening those lines. So this is where, like I was saying, if you have a detail-oriented child or you're a detail-oriented person, you can spend all day on this. It will be so relaxing. And just as long as you just tell yourself it doesn't have to be perfect, it can be a way that you can sit there and develop it, and it just becomes prettier and prettier as you keep adding those details. So, And if at any time you have a young one and they get kind of bored with this, well, let me just show you. Let's get into some color. And then, no matter what, with a black permanent marker, this does not run with water. So at any time, once we add some color, you can come back in when your paper's dry and add more detail. So we're going to start adding color. Now I'm going to use, like I said, just some Crayola water-based markers, and I want to give you a tip really quickly. If your markers dry out, never fear, they're about to create a new art supply for you. So what we do is we take our leftover markers that are all dried out, and I put them in a cup of water. Can you see how much water? About that much. And these all happen to be green. And you let them sit for a couple days, and you now have a liquid watercolor. So all that will come down. It's ready to use. It's wonderful. You can also recycle your markers with Crayola, but we kind of like recycling them with wonderful liquid watercolor. So you end up, and even, I don't know if you can see it, you have liquid watercolor. So that's kind of a fun tip. If you have some dried out markers, never fear, you have liquid watercolor waiting to happen. So let's talk about filling in our rose window. So I'm going to do some shading with our markers and show you how to do it. And so you want to get some markers that have similar colors. So warm colors, think of hot, reds, yellows, oranges. Cool colors, think of, playing in the ocean, cool, grass, green, blue, certain purples, greens. So I'm going to take 3 colors right here, and we're going to work on those. And I want to show you how I would paint with my watercolor markers. Well, they're not even watercolor markers. They're just plain old school markers, So I'm going to take one of my sections here, and I'm going to put a purple line right in there, okay? I did purple. Yes, Keaton?
If you still wanted to add, can you color before, if you wanted to add more detail?
If you want to add more detail, you can color right now and still add more detail. The permanent markers are alcohol-based. That means water doesn't smear them. Water-based markers means that water is their base. So when I add water, which you'll see in just a minute, it will move. So if you want to go ahead and start adding your colors, because I kind of want you to play with blending, you can come back in and add those details. Because like I said, you can leave it just like this, or you can go detail crazy. Super fun. So I put my purple there. I just picked my darkest color, and then I'm going to put my medium color. So I'm going to take a darker blue, and I'm going to stripe about in the middle. You see how I'm putting these stripes across there? I'm going to leave those open. And then I'm going to take, I had the lightest blue right here, and I'm going to color in there. And I may need to add more, so I'm going to keep them handy. So I just picked one ring, and I put a stripe of purple, a stripe of blue, and a stripe of a lighter blue, because I was trying to go from my darkest to my medium to my lightest color. Now, I'm on a vertical surface, so mine may drip, but you're on the table, so yours should not be affected by gravity. So I have a little bit of water on a plain paintbrush. There is no paint on here. It's just water. And I'm going to start blending my first 2 colors together. Just like that, I go into the purple and purple to blue, and we should get some blending going on. You should end up with kind of a pretty good blend. How about that? You see that on camera? Mm-hmm. So then I'm going to rinse my brush and kind of get some of the dark off and get a little more water, and I'm going to bring my light color in. So remember, I'm just using Crayola markers here. There's no specialty markers, and I'm going to bring that blue down. So, yes, Tate?
No.
Oh, okay. You're raising your hand. So you should end up with a really neat gradation. Gradation going from light to dark or dark to light. And it's a real neat way to create beautiful blends. Now you will always see a faint line where the marker was, but on the rose window it works so beautifully. And so what you can do is you can do every other one because you don't want to do right next to it while it's wet. So let's come down and let's do that again. I'm going to do this one right here. I'm going to put my purple, my darkest, and I'm going to put this right here, kind of a stripe right there. And then I'm going to take my lightest. Now you can use this technique on anything. And again, you can use this with watercolors. The difference is you would blend your watercolors as you're doing it. This gives you a lot of control because they're right there. And I'm going to blend into my darks. See, I'm just adding water and I'm moving those together. You could do this forever. It's so relaxing. And then I'm going to bring my light color and blend my darker color down in there. Is it on? Oh, yep. Is it on? There we go. Uh-oh, it's back off. Then off, on, off, on. Okay, it may be. We're going to switch batteries real fast. You keep coloring. Oh. Right there, it's on. Can y'all hear me? Are we good? Tate, can you hear it? Try it. We're good?
It's connected.
Okay, let's go again. Okay, so we've got our stripes right here. Sorry guys, technical difficulties. So we're going to color in our light. And let me add a little bit more medium. Hey, thanks for letting us know. Sometimes we don't know whether we're off or on, because our lights don't always show up on the camera. So, and then I'm blending the darks. Now, this type of blending technique using markers you can do on any painting. You can do it on even, you just need thick enough paper that can handle some water. Still on? Okay. Okay, guys, so you can do that all the way around. Now you can just take one color, let's just put this in here, and just put it at the top, and just do half of it, and then take some water and bring it down and shade it that way. So that you get this really beautiful, again, you can get the gradation that way with a single color. Just put it at the top. I'll show you that again. Remember, I'm going to skip a space because that's wet. And then I'm going to add some water. And bring that in. Oh, that looks so pretty. I love that. And then you just keep skipping your spaces. Now, usually you don't think about that these are paint too, but you can use these. It's just a different way, and when you're doing something that's in tight little spaces, it helps you do lines. Now, so these are Crayola markers. These are my fancy lettering markers right here that are Tombows. I love these. I don't know if you can see my giant stack, but I've got a whole bunch. And they are fancy. They've got a brush tip. So I don't know if you can see how that moves like that. So you can really work on painting like a brush. So I could come in here like this and paint in that way. They also have a little pointy tip. So when you see markers that have multiple tips, so it has a regular, so if I wanted to get way in on those details, but these are also water-based, so they will do the same thing. They will move in and let me blend those in just like that, same way. It just allows me to do lots of extra tricks. So now here's where the fun goes. You can do as much as you want in here. The more you do, the more beautiful your window becomes. You can then, when it's dry, somebody asked, you can take, let me see if any of mine are dry. This one isn't quite, but you can take your permanent marker and you can come back over and add some more detail right on top. So I just darkened it in. You might be able to see, or I could color that in right there and give myself some more detail. Anywhere you want to do that. Because this is when there's a lot of science in art. What is water-based and what is alcohol-based? It's just water isn't going to be affected by oil. So we've got an alcohol base. Oil and alcohol aren't the same, but I was trying to make my point. You got it. You trying to look at what the Tombow markers are? I wanted to show you Tombow. Tombow, like Tom has a bow in his hair. Or Tom is shooting a bow and arrow. However you think of it. But I hope you love this lesson. You can sit all afternoon. You can take this with you. You can come back to this and add to it. There's so much detail involved here. Or you can just take big colors and decide, I want to color this whole thing in because it's sunny outside and I want to make this beautiful and colorful and just like the sky. So it doesn't, but I can even use my paintbrush to get all the way in. So you can add more details, you can come back in, you can round corners, but there's a few tips. Just remember these tips as you do it. If you do a pattern in one of your rings, so let's say this was your largest paper plate. This is going to be your largest paper plate ring. Do the pattern all the way around the circle. That's important. That keeps the pattern being the same all the way around. The second tip is when you are painting and coloring, skip every other one because we're adding water to the paper. And that way they won't bleed together and you'll get these beautiful crisp colors. On that note, I think we're pretty much done with this art lesson. I know you probably aren't done. You probably have way more to go in your window, and you can do so much more. We did have a question early on, is this going to be the last art lesson? No, no, no. I would warn you ahead of time if it was the last art lesson. We are going to have a full week next week. My kids are in school for the next week and a half, so we're going to continue with them in school, and then I will let you know how we're going to transition to the summer. I know some of you may be long from finishing school. We start school really early in August, and we taught our lessons all through spring break. We lost our spring break because we were already in quarantine, so we just did school and did our lessons with you and spent our spring break with you. So we're getting out a little bit early, and we will continue to share with you. But next week, there'll be a full week. We'll have a great week. I already know there's one day that is a big red yak. So I'm really excited about that. There'll be another fun week. I'll still be trying to use materials you have. And we're going to look forward to maybe starting to get out of our houses pretty soon and enjoying the sun and getting ready for summer. So we will see you next week. I will post on Sunday. It is gorgeous here. The sun is shining. So I'm going to all day tomorrow spend outside with my kids and my husband, and we're going to enjoy the sun and being outside and listening to nature. So you do the same if you can, if your weather permits, and we'll post those art lessons on Sunday, and then we will see you Monday at 1 p.m. Y'all have a great weekend. Tell Tate thank you for running the computer. He was very nervous about it because he is more on this end of the camera, and then Keaton was running the camera for me today. Thanks again for being with us through technical difficulties. Art is man's nature, and nature is God's art. See y'all soon.